Hi guys, nice to see you on my channel again. I'm Andrew Zeleno, professional audio engineer, mixer, producer with more than 10 years of experience. I was working for the biggest broadcasting company in my region. I got classification the top rank audio engineer. In my former country there is some rating. Last 5 years I have been teaching audio engineering, mixing. So I have this unique course. You can check the description box. You will check a couple of videos on my course. What is really unique on my course, I'm working exactly on your projects. And we always compare your projects with the best sounding songs ever. You should understand that knowledge that you already have, it doesn't mean it's enough. Sometimes, especially from beginners, I typically got messages. It's funny because people with experience typically who want to attend my course, they typically say, okay, I spent like 8 years working with audio, but I still not getting that kind of quality of sound like I wanted. They kind of have big experience, but they started to understand maybe there is some lack of, advanced skills in some specific areas and all this stuff. From beginners, sometimes I got funny questions like, I already know compression, I already know EQ, what kind of topics you cover? It's funny because actually there is no magic techniques. Audio engineering, it's not like about knowing some specific trick and your sound is awesome. It means this guy just think like this. I know EQ, I know compressors, I know like everything. My song is not like top sounding professional songs just because of I still don't know some specific trick or some unique technique. And it's bullshit. Like 10 years ago, I knew kind of everything about EQs. 5 years ago, I was making much better sound, but I still knew the same kind of things about EQs, but I started to understand them like more on advanced levels, and so on and so on. So it means we cover EQ, but believe me, even guys with 10 years of experience when they cover EQ topic, they also a little bit skeptical. They say, okay, I pretty know EQ, but after they finish EQ, they say, what? Like, oh my god, it seems like I knew all this stuff, but right now it's really gives me absolutely different sound, different approach, different kind of vision how to do it, Beginners just don't realize that they just don't know EQing on that level, which gives you top sounding songs. If you know EQ, it doesn't mean you know EQ. You know what I mean? So it's like playing a guitar, right? For example, you know blues scale, you know how to use left hand and right hand, but you still doesn't play like B.B. King or somebody like that, right? Even if you gonna play like B.B. King, probably you gonna know the same things, the same blues scale and the same ideas how you put left hand and how you put right hand, but it will be absolutely different level. So this is what I offer, different level. For example, everybody knows if you boost upper mid-range, you make your sound a little bit more like present, open, more clarity in this way. But a lot of people, when they boost 3K, they listen to that instrument they're working on. Instead, you should listen to other instruments. Why? Because if you're gonna boost 3K on a guitar, for example, it can cover your vocal, and your vocal will be drowning under your guitar. So one little nuance and it makes absolutely huge difference. Or opposite, for example, to kind of increase clarity in your mix, you need to boost 3K. And you're gonna boost 3K on a vocal, 3K on a guitar, 3K on a snare, and 3K on a kick. And what you do artificial frequency conflict. Because every instrument will be sounding with emphasized the same frequency. So you kind of say to your listener, listen to 3K, it's super important frequency, notice this frequency. But every instrument will be trying to put itself in that short range around 3K. The more loud and the more pronounced instrument around 3K will be dominating, everything else will be drowning under this instrument. So you shouldn't boost 3K on every instrument. So what I mean, everybody knows that you need to boost 3K, but nobody consider shortcomings of boosting 3K. You should understand, in mixing there is nothing like only like improvements. If you do something, you always get something bad. In every topic we even have these kind of subtopics called shortcomings of EQ, shortcomings of compression, and all this stuff. So everything should be considered in specific way. So audio industry is based on myths and lack of ability to hear the difference. You should understand, normal people go to work, right? They kind of spend some little amount of time working in home studios a little bit, you know, for fun or something like that. My day, every day of my life during last 15 years was like that. In the morning I compare. At 12 o'clock I compare. In the evening I compare. Sometimes I don't sleep nights comparing, mixing, recording in different situations. I use stereo system in the car to compare mixes in different type of headphones, expensive headphones, in cheap headphones, on one pair of monitors, on the other pair of monitors, in different rooms, different studios. I trained my ears so great that after, you know, a lot of years you really start to hear all these differences. You know, honestly speaking, I even remember like 5 years ago, sometimes you apply something and you just don't hear the difference. And you say, okay, maybe there is no difference. And on the internet right now, a lot of people who say, okay, there is no difference, ha ha ha, everybody who says there is some difference, they are stupid. Actually, wait a second, it's like, you know, it's like in every part of your life, you should train yourself. For example, if you play a guitar, maybe if you grab a guitar for the first time, you cannot play, right? You know how to do it, for example, but you cannot play. You just haven't trained yourself. The same when you play basketball. You know that you need to throw a ball. Maybe you were explained how to do it, but actually until you're gonna do it like 10,000 times, throwing a ball, right? You will not be a super good basketball player. The same with audio engineering. And what I really noticed, based on my teaching experience, I even can train students' ear. I found this kind of method is pretty interesting. Sometimes I play variation A and variation B for the students, and they kind of don't understand what's the difference. And I say what they should listen to. Kind of notice upper mid-range in this instrument. In the drum kit I say listen to only a snare, listen to only upper mid-range, notice how it's kind of more smoothed out, or you know, like a little bit more open hi-hat, or a kick doesn't sound that present like a hi-hat. In this case, students start to understand, maybe they hear it, but if you don't hear it, it doesn't mean there is no difference. Sometimes it just seems like you just didn't know what to listen to. And I kind of train students to understand what to listen to, and they really start to hear the difference. Even little nuances, okay, you can say, okay, whatever, it's just subtle. On the internet right now it's super popular phrase, it's just subtle, so it doesn't matter. No, it matters. It matters. Why? Just because of when one nuance maybe it doesn't matter, second nuance it doesn't matter, but when you blend 50 different nuances together with just subtle differences, it makes huge difference in the final. Don't you think? This is how you choose equipment. You say, it's just subtle difference, so there is no difference. Right now I'm giving you ideas, and when you combine these ideas together, you start to understand what really you should consider buying equipment. So it's really important what we're discussing right now. So next thing, what's really important, people say, in the mix you will never hear the difference. It's the biggest bullshit I ever heard in audio engineering. First of all, tools for mixing, they were made to make some difference, and in the mix specifically. That's why they called mixing tools, like EQs, compressors and all this stuff. Let me explain what I mean, because it can be a little bit controversial and people can be a little bit reacting in the wrong way. Let me explain what I mean. I'm just gonna give you some abstractive example. For example, you listen to a vocal and you compare two microphones, and one microphone sounds almost exactly the same like second microphone, and you listen to this vocal in solo with nothing, you know, like only a vocal, and you say, okay, maybe there is some difference, but there is no difference, and in the mix you will not hear absolutely no difference, because in the mix it's even harder to hear it. Actually, it's opposite. Why? Because when you listen to some instrument in solo, it sounds by itself. You hear all nuances, low end, mids, highs, upper mid-range, kind of density of sound, dynamics. You listen to all these little nuances and you say, okay, it sounds almost the same, no problem with that. You know, in the mix nobody will hear the difference. But reality is next. That little nuances you even sometimes don't notice in solo mode. In the mix it will be really audible, and actually it will make huge difference in terms of the final feeling. You know, sound, it's not only about frequency balance, like how much my upper mid-range louder than mid-mid frequencies. No, in the mix it gives you different vibe, different mood. Every type, even equalizer, can give you different mood, different kind of a like reaction of your body to the sound, you know, like giving you a little bit different taste of sound, and it kind of creates magic, it creates feeling in music. Music is not just about pitching, frequencies, and you know, like volume and phase. Sometimes it's like that, but you know, it just gives all the time all these nuances. When they blend it together, it gives you different vibe. And for example, if you don't want to believe in vibe, I'm gonna tell you in your way. You say, okay, there is only frequencies. What really matter? I can say your vocal will be a black curve. It's a frequency curve, and for example, you have some boost around like 6K or something like that. One microphone has a little bit more, like 0.5 more, and second microphone has just 0.5 decibels less, around 6K. When you try to put this vocal in the mix, you try to find volume for this vocal. Look what I do. Black color, it's a vocal. So in this case, I could do, for example, like this. Our sibilances around 6K will not be jumping out of the mix in this way. It's just a little bit higher than red line, which is music. And vocal, in terms of 6K, seems like sitting in the mix. Not so loud, not jumping out of the mix. But every other part of frequencies up to 6K, up to 5, 4K will be lower than music, and vocal will be sounding not that clear. In this way you say, okay, my vocal doesn't sound open, it doesn't sound clear. Let's boost it, let's make it a little bit louder. You make it like this, and you put finally vocal, of course it's abstractive example, but you put every frequencies of this vocal a little bit higher than music, and it seems like it sits in music. But actually, look at 6K range over here. Let's say from 4 to 8K. It's louder than music right now, and vocal will be jumping out of the mix because of 6K in the vocal, much louder than 6K in music. And second microphone, I mean, can be like more flat frequency curve like this, for example, and you just find better volume for the vocal and it sits in the mix. But at the same time you can say, wait a second, you are telling bullshit, because vocal can be EQ'd. We can use de-esser, for example, of course, but how great you can set up de-esser. De-esser can be the cause of muffled sound in vocal, or when your vocal sounds like this, it can be like bad pronunciation for your vocal. Clarity. Sometimes it's better to achieve right sound in vocal from the beginning, from recording stage, and you will not gonna spoil your vocal by using some plugins, for example. Also, you can say, okay, we have an EQ, so let's lower with equalizer this 6K like this, and it easily can be put in a mix like this. I agree with you, you can lower with EQ 6K. Did you have experience like that? Try on a vocal, cut 6K using any EQ. It's gonna be, you know, like losing some clarity, openness. Your vocal will be sounding more muffled, like more squeezed, dirtier. Some phase issues can appear because equalizer is always based on some changes in phase of your sound. So it always gonna give you some additional bad things, like bad artifacts. That's why you never should rely only on equalizer, like saying something like, okay, it sounds bad, but I'm gonna put some EQ later and it will be working. On the internet everybody says like that nowadays, like, see, it's kind of okay, it's a little bit different, but after some EQing it will be the same. Show us. Nobody shows these things for some reason. They only say, after EQing it will be the same, but put some EQ, show us how it's the same. No, they never do it. Why? Because it's much more difficult to just, by applying EQ, achieving the same type of sound. Because sometimes it's impossible to achieve the same type of sound just because of you corrected some frequencies. One microphone can be better suited for your purposes, you know, for your vocal. We always try to find that piece of gear that really has something to do with your sound, you know, kind of you try to craft it. If you're gonna say like everybody, pretty close, pretty the same, in the mix is the same, why you at least wasting your time doing audio engineering, you know, recording, mixing? It's like gear which really gives you opportunity to achieve some sort of vibe, to make some piece of art of yours, you know, so it's super important. every little nuance like it sits in the mix. For example, when people compare two microphones, they listen to vocals in solo and say, okay, it's pretty the same. Have you checked how these two microphones are sitting in the mix with your vocal? One microphone can instantly put your vocal in the mix, can give you some kind of full picture of music, you know, your vocal live inside of your instruments. It sounds perfect, gives the right vibe, kind of you don't feel like it's some technical issue over there, and you enjoying story which is being said in this song. Instead, one microphone can be just a little bit more, some frequencies around some frequency range, and it doesn't sit in the mix, and you listening to the song and you say, wait a second, I don't want to listen to some lyrics or understand this music, I just don't feel it. You know, it sounds kind of weird, kind of strange. Vocals sounds like cheap, kind of above music or something like that. Or opposite, kind of too deep in music, like, you know, like not a star of the mix. So this little nuance really matters, don't you think? It's the same like people sometimes say, okay, you can use every EQ in your mixing and you will achieve the same type of sound. It's absolutely wrong. Every equalizer has its own sound, its own vibe, different curves. 1073 have much more open and clean upper mid-range. SSL can be pretty aggressive equalizer with some settings, but at the same time can be more or less like general purpose EQ. Full-tech can give you some really big bottom end, but using attenuation knob can give you opportunity to kind of clean your upper bass and low mid, not to make it too muddy or humming, like low hum in your sound, you know. Every equalizer can do something and other EQs cannot do it. For example, EQ from 88RS console from Neve, amazing one. It has super gentle high boost, right? Even filter like with 12 decibels per octave gives you some specific sort of sound. And classic 18 decibels per octave giving you like more clean, low end, but at the same time still pretty musical, not so kind of artificially sounding instruments, especially when your fundamental tone somewhere closer to frequency point you use, right? So definitely a lot of things really makes things different. Don't play in this game like right now so popular on the internet saying everything the same, you will never hear the difference, in blind test, blah blah blah, and all this stuff. You know, train your ears. In blind test, I always do blind test, you know, always do A-B comparisons. Sometimes even when I watch even YouTube videos, I convert audio into audio files. I make it perfectly the same. I even out levels for myself. I put in some audio player of my computer and I don't look at the screen. I kind of randomly play first, second, and I try to describe what I hear, what's the difference. How many people really spend time on it? Instead of saying something like everybody say, okay, there is no difference, I bet in the blind test you never hear the difference. I hear the difference all the time. I can do 10 from 10 even when it's so subtle difference between variation A and B. So you know, it's about training, it's about experience, how much time you spend working with audio. You know, it's like people say nowadays, you can put some EQ on a Stratocaster and it will be sounding like Les Paul. Sometimes, you know, in some situation it can be pretty possible, you know, in some specific clean mode, even if you managed. It just means you pay more attention maybe on the frequency balance or something like that, but it never gonna have the same kind of deepness, or it's gonna be like dirty, or some noise can appear, some kind of dirty harmonics in some specific range, because EQ also put some additional harmonics or exaggerate existed harmonics in your sound. In the mix they can be sounding different, they can sit in the mix differently, and the most important, giving different vibe. So this is what people really don't consider. They just say, okay, we're gonna kind of replicate the same frequency curve. Of course you can, but it never gonna give you the same feeling how you consider this difference. Maybe for you every electric guitar sounds the same. A lot of people on the internet say something like that. Every electric guitar sounds exactly the same, or every amplifier sounds exactly the same. So for these guys maybe there will not be any difference. So instead of buying 3 Stratocasters and trying to achieve the same Les Paul sound, maybe it's better to buy some Les Paul. But every Les Paul can be sounding different. A lot of things going on in there, you know. To achieve some sort of sound you like, you really should find the right instrument. or put right pickups. Sometimes even by putting the right pickups your guitar will not be sounding exactly the same like you wanted. Maybe it's a question of electronics, maybe the bridge doesn't translate vibration correctly or something like that. Just because of all these myths really pushes you in the wrong direction. For example, I want to kind of buy Neve type of preamplifier, and we get some clone, and this clone sounds pretty close. But wait a second, I don't want pretty close, I want exactly the same like old Neve. Also, old Neves can be sounding different, no question. You know what I mean. Why I should pay $4,000 for something which is pretty close? I want exactly the same, or give me this clone which is pretty close for 500. It would be fair, don't you think? Another example, how you invest in your room. It's super important nowadays how people consider a room setup, where you work. This room is not actually my kind of studio, so it's just a computer in typical room. Bass traps in corners, panels, but it's not enough, it should be set up properly. Some company can say, okay, put some foam on the walls. And people say, okay, I'm gonna spend a couple of $1,000s, I'm gonna buy a lot of foam, I'm gonna cover every kind of a wall around me, and it will be right sounding room. Because I will not hear reflections. Really? Don't you know that this foam doesn't kill frequencies lower than 200 Hz? Your 100 Hz, 150, 80 Hz always will be reflecting anyway. It's more about your size of your room, it's more about standing waves. When you put a lot of foam, a lot of absorption on your walls, typically you even do worse thing comparing when you don't put anything on walls. Why? Because what you hear typically, it's a direct sound from monitors. By the way, we will have this topic on my course during first month, so I'm not gonna tell a lot about this, just a couple of hints. So you listen to direct sound from monitors, and you hear reflected sound from your room. So your brain and your ears combine these sounds together, right? This is why you kind of don't hear the real sound, because you hear your sound with reflections from your room. If you're gonna kill all reflections using foam or some absorption panels based on something like more expensive than just foam, you're gonna angle your frequency response from your room, because your low frequencies still will be reflecting from your room, and you will have dead highs and high mid, and maybe mid frequencies as well. So what it means in this case, you're gonna cheat on yourself even more, because all the time you will hear more low end, more low mid frequencies. In this case, I'm gonna give you an example graphically. For example, your direct sound can be like this. It's like frequency response, pretty even frequency response. And your reflections from your room can be kind of the same. It's great. Actually, it's the goal of acoustic treatment, to make your reflections the same but quieter. And when you blend together these sounds, if your room is really loud, it will be like a little bit difficult to hear black, original direct sound. If your room sounds quiet, it will be much easier to hear your direct sound and make your right decisions on your sound. But if you put only foams in your room and you kind of believe in some bullshit that they say on the internet, like by putting bass traps in the corners it gives you absolutely controllable low mid and low frequencies, it's all bullshit, because it's a matter of size, it's a matter of unparalleled walls, it's standing waves, it's room resonances. This foam cannot control frequencies like 60 Hz, which is like 7 meters long. It's impossible. Sometimes your room even smaller than 7 meters. If you're gonna put some foams on walls, it will be like low frequencies, low mid frequencies, and nothing in high frequencies. And you combine these two sounds together, it will be like this. So your music always will be boomier and muddier, and you instinctively always will be cutting more lows, more low mid, and in normal situation, in headphones, in different studios, your music will be sounding much more upper mid-rangey, more bright, not enough warmness, not enough body, not enough kind of cool deep low end, and that's it. So your room always will be cheating on you. So when these companies say something like, okay, buy this, something pretty expensive panels, like one panel for like 600 or something like that, and you need to spend like 6,000 on these panels, do you believe you're gonna achieve right sounding room in this case? I'm gonna save you $1,000 in this case. You can say, okay, tell us who know how to set up rooms. And in this case we come to another myth, that there is some real experts about room acoustics. Of course some guys really have some knowledge on it. Of course they can be much better experienced comparing to like regular guy who really don't know anything about that. But honestly speaking, just ask yourself how many people in the world really spent the whole life learning how to work with rooms. I really don't believe there is even one guy who kind of a god knowing everything about room setup. Because they can, for example, build 5 studios and for some coincidence it sounded great, but 6 room will be sounding bad. Everybody in professional industry know this kind of a magic coincidence. Sometimes it just sounds right, sometimes it just doesn't sound right, even if you counted everything. Why it happens? Why we shouldn't believe that a lot of people know how to set up their rooms? Because what's the point of having right setup room? What's the point? Your room shouldn't cheat on you, because all decisions you do based on your monitors, on your sound, alright? And it's super important that your room doesn't lead you in the wrong direction, because the worst thing ever if this song sounds just absolutely amazing in your room, but in other room on different monitors, in different situation, in the car, it sounds just enormously bad. What I mean, we take some song from Chris Lord-Alge. It sounds awesome, and I do the same song in this room. Actually, I even tried. When I moved to this apartment, I tried to make kind of a song sounding really close to Chris Lord-Alge mix. I was successful more or less and unsuccessful at the same time. Why? Because honestly speaking, in this room, on these monitors, in this environment, it was sounding exactly the same like Santa Monica song mixed by Chris Lord-Alge. It was really good. When I checked this song in different situations, comparing again with Santa Monica song, it was like in a car, it was in headphones or in different studio, I was shocked how different it sounded over there. In this room it was exactly the same, absolutely amazing. And in other room it was really bad. Maybe not bad, but really different. Absolutely what I didn't expect. Of course, I just joking a little bit because I know all these things. What I mean by that, I mean it's obvious that your room plays some tricks on you and you really believe it sounds awesome, but in different environment with more low end, with subwoofer setup or on bigger monitors, it can be amazingly awful sounding. Your room is not right for you because it leads you in the wrong direction. You think it sounds great, but in reality it doesn't sound that great. So the idea of right setup studio room where it doesn't affect on your decisions. And your song will be sounding exactly the same everywhere. You compare this your song with Santa Monica song and it sounds awesome. You compare the same song and Santa Monica song in different environment and it sounds exactly the same and everywhere the same. Right now just ask yourself how many people in the world really spend, for example, $20,000, they set up a room, they made like 10 mixes, they compared all these mixes, comparing with some reference tracks, in really different environment after they made this mix. Then they ruined their studio, they set up everything from the scratch again, they spent again $20,000, they did again 10 mixes, then spent additional year to compare all these songs in different environment after they finish this mix in this exact room, in a car, in headphones, in different studios, and they say, okay, right now we really know what's the difference. How many people spend their money and their life and they really considered everything, they really managed to achieve top sounding mixes, to really figure out how it can be comparable with real top sounding mixes. Chances that there are some people like this goes to 0. That's it. You should understand it's always like a little bit like myths. A lot of people just don't know what to consider. They just listen to each other. Some ideas, they kind of believe it's like that, but actually it's not. Check my videos, check for updates. Definitely I'm gonna put a lot of videos on my channel. Subscribe because it shows me your interest, and the more subscribers I definitely gonna put more and more videos. I can open like only like 1% of all things we cover on our course because it's gonna be fair in this way, because everything for my students. But definitely even that 1% is just amazing. You can read comments under all my videos on audio. and you can understand what people feel about this, right? Remember, this channel is like 2 different videos on this channel. Check only videos in English, okay? Because I'm vlogging in different language, so skip videos in different language. The main kind of first step, what I offer you, is to consider knowledge over equipment, knowledge over commercials, knowledge over statements on the internet. There is no such a thing like great preamp and bad preamp. One preamp can be better for you, another preamp can be worse for you. That's it. So it's always depends. You just need to work a lot, considering every little nuance. But at the same time, how you can consider it properly if you, for example, not so advanced audio engineer to understand how it works. So in my opinion, it's a great way to go to some school. But believe me, schools are different, and people who say on the internet you shouldn't go to school, it's just wasting your money and time, probably yes, because typically in these schools they ask you like $50,000, for example, for the course. Or they just give you some fundamentals, you know, like basics, and then they say, okay, go outside and do what you can do. So it's crazy, because in my course, we concentrating on your situation, not like on some random knowledge, but your situation. I check your projects, but not like randomly checking your projects. We concentrating on homeworks, on your specific sound, and we not just compare like how it sounds better or worse. We compare your project against top recordings ever from Chris Lord-Alge, from top 20 audio engineers, and only in this way you really can see if it works for you, this preamplifier or this microphone or this plugin or that. For example, we have just enormous amount of different topics and subtopics. Just imagine we learn in dynamics. After we covered all basics and fundamentals, and after a while, let's say, advanced skills like residual compression, how to consider soft knee properly, so student starts to really hear all these nuances, all these differences. We don't play in the game like everybody on the internet saying something like in the mix you never hear the difference, blah blah blah. After a while, students really start to do pretty the same quality like top tracks, or at least it's really almost there, you know, like on the same level, but with different probably nuances, some mistakes, but it's already there. The most important here, for example, we started to learn models. We have in every topic, for example, in dynamics, we have compressors models topic. Absolutely amazing. We cover every historically known compressor and emulations of it. So we cover almost every plugin. Based on 11E76, for example. I'm gonna give you these plugins, you're gonna test it, you're gonna make homeworks, we're gonna compare every plugin with each other, why one works in some specific situation. It works in your song. Nothing like random things like I heard from some engineer it's great to do something like that. No, not like this. Next, really important thing, what really gives you ideas how to work, is when you see these examples on the internet, when people show you how they made some projects. They give you some project and this project already mixed, and they say, see what kind of settings I made, and everybody say, okay, it's so cool. But then you repeat these settings and it doesn't work in your project. Why? Because nobody taught you how to make these decisions. What we do, we in real time open your projects. I never checked your project before the class, and I opened in front of students this project for the first time. And we instantly start to find mistakes, to redo something, checking different plugins, different settings. Every step I explain, how I make decisions, what I consider, what kind of a problem. Sometimes I cannot manage to get better sound. I explain why. I find different way. Class by class, every time you get more and more vision, approach and ideas. How to consider mixing, how to consider recording, not only like checking final result, checking process. And it's real process because I do it in real time. Making decisions in real time because I never checked before, I never prepared to check these projects, so that's why it's super valuable. So this is what we learn on our course. Every little nuance, detail, how you understand relations between instruments, not only what you can do with actual instrument. When we learn pull text, we even learn every plugin, every settings, we compare these different plugins, trying to figure out what's the difference. Our students easily can say, for example, how Waves plugin sound, how Slate's plugin sound, and how Universal Audio plugins sound. I'm not joking, by the way. Pretty controversial, but believe me, it's the truth. You really can define type of plugins from different manufacturers. They really sound different. It just proves, instead of buying newer instrument, maybe you should learn deeply how to work with your instruments, how to EQ it, how to compress it. So this is what defines professional mix and amateur mix, because over here you based on really what you hear. Every movement you do thoughtfully, not just because of somebody told you to do this, you know, that's why. This course is really long, you know, like 9 months, and if it doesn't work, you will see it instantly. But for example, right now I don't even have seats. It just proves it works really well. Students really like this course. If you will be interested in this course, send me an email and we can book a seat for you for the next groups. New groups will start pretty soon, so you can book a seat for yourself. This course is really affordable, it's in the Skype, and it's really game changer. Believe me, you will save like 10 years. Also, sometimes people say, okay, I'm gonna buy something, I'm gonna buy new instrument or new preamplifier because what I get from this instrument really doesn't sound properly. And sometimes, you know, sometimes it's about mixing. Typically people say it's about recording, because sometimes whatever you do, it doesn't work, and you say definitely something wrong with recording. But right now I'm gonna show you an example when mixing really matters, because mixing can lead you in the wrong way in terms of recording. Just because of wrong mixing, you can decide to buy something else because you will believe it doesn't work for you because of recording, but it was a mistake in mixing. That's it.